for supporting the effort to audit the Federal Reserve. I think that no one should be above the law, and so I'd like to have what they're doing come to light. So I appreciate you supporting that. I actually have a two-part question today. Earlier it was asked your position on following the Constitution, those kinds of things, and you mentioned it really comes down to whose interpretation of the Constitution. That really brings the question to mind for me of whose interpretation of the Constitution you personally adhere to. Would you say you follow more of the original intent of the Founding Fathers, or the modern view that the Constitution is whatever we say it is, or whatever the Supreme Court says it is, or whatever that way?
Well, first of all, I got to argue with that because while I believe I see it from the point of the Founding Fathers, I would suggest that probably the other side would make the same argument. So once again, we can argue about that, and that's what's delightful about our Constitution. It was so vaguely written. And if you ever read the Federalist Papers, it's really kind of fun to do because they were not of one like mind, and they were open to a lot of interpretation as well. So while I think I fall in the line of a conservative interpretation, there are some that are more conservative than I, obviously, that would argue that I'm a liberal, but the liberals wouldn't. So yeah, that is one of those arguments. It's much like, as I said, what's the most important issue facing America today? We could talk literally all night and all tomorrow about an interpretation of the Constitution.
Right. So you have read the Federalist Papers then?
Oh, absolutely.
Good
I love
job. Good job.
Yeah.
Very few people do, very few people can.
Yeah.
But as I read through it, I found a lot of points that were intentionally vague, but a lot of points that were abundantly clear as I read through the Federalist Papers as well. One statement from James Madison, who we look at as the father of the Constitution. I want to see if you agree with his statement on this. He says, "I cannot seem to place my finger on the part of the Constitution which grants to Congress to spend on the objects of benevolence the money of their constituents." And I looked through the Constitution too. I agree with him. I couldn't find
again, this is no win because we can argue the vagaries or the exact interpretation. Sorry, I wasn't there, so I don't know what James was thinking. But you tell me, why is the Supreme Court? This is a rhetorical question, but you can answer it if you want. Say, I don't think we want the government controlling our healthcare system, and yet, why is the Supreme Court allowed Medicare? I guess the Constitution under that interpretation, I don't know.
Right.
Say, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't want to be. I married one. so again, this is great.
Certainly.
Dialogue, but it's where do we go with it?
Personally, I've found the statements of the Founding Fathers pretty clear on many issues, this being one of them. Examples of what I would consider spending money on objects of benevolence would be stimulus package, cash for clunkers, which on that one, if the record read right, you voted against it, and then you voted for it. Is that correct?
Yeah. You want to know why?
Actually, I do, yes. And was it?
Can we stick to the specifics and the facts? I mean, again, I'd love to have a theoretical, philosophical discussion on the Constitution, but in the essence of time and the group and such, where do we go with it? I mean, it'll be interesting and fun. I mean, that's my life.
Except there's people waiting. But
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead and explain
Cash
for
clunkers. Once again, picking and choosing winners and losers. And so when the authorization came up, and see, again, quick civics fun, I apologize. I mean, this is what I'm paid to do, and so I'm supposed to understand it. You set up a program, and then you pay for it. Well, I'm not on any committee that sets up the program, but eventually the setup of the program has to come to the House of Representatives to be voted on. So when they brought the authorization, which is setting up the program for cash for clunkers, I voted no. I said, this is a dumb idea. This is stupid. Don't do this. While it may stimulate the economy, which is really what we want to do, this is not the way to do it. You're once again picking winners and losers. So I voted against the authorization. And then they brought forward a $1 billion appropriation. And you know what? Nancy Pelosi never even brought it to the House floor, to the Appropriations Committee for a vote. See, we have not worked under what's called regular order for the last few years because they couldn't afford bringing those to the Appropriations Committee because that's where we have the opportunity to have amendments. They can write a rule on the House floor where we cannot amend the bill. And they don't want us to have our input or expose some of their philosophies. So they bypass the appropriations bill and they take the bill directly from the Speaker's office to the House floor where it can't be amended and voted on. And it takes a majority vote, 218. So I voted against the $1 billion appropriation as well, even though I didn't have a chance to say or do anything about it in the committee. Well, it was so popular, and it was so mismanaged, and so many of our Montana auto dealers and constituents participated in it, that the money was gone in 4 days, and all these contracts were done. And at a time where you have an economy and a recession, and you're creating problems, they exacerbated the problem. And so we went back in and said, okay, we voted against the authorization, we voted against the appropriation. We're going to try and save you from yourself. We can't do that to Montanans and Montana businesses. So we'll take money out of your so-called stimulus package that was going to be spent on something that probably was less than stimulative. We're going to take that money, put it into the cash for clunkers, but that's it. You're done. When it's gone, it's gone. We're going to try to save you from yourself. So that's where that vote came from.
That makes a lot more sense. Thank you. Basically, solve some of the problems that were created by
I was against it. I wanted to be against it, but I'm just not going to do that to the